Now let me adjust this. And no, the Chinese economy is not gonna collapse in this number of days. Hi everyone, this is Pete here. So today I want to talk about something that many YouTubers have talked about and mentioned, is that the Chinese economy is collapsing. And in fact, if you go to the YouTube video, you will see there are so many clickbaity thumbnails talking about this. Is this true, or is this just some kind of way to get you to watch their videos? So what is happening in China right now? I think it all started with the real estate bubble that just popped, which is the downfall of this particular company called Evergrande. And the total loss is a whopping $300 billion in debt that it will be default. And one of the reasons why many of the YouTubers says that this is going to really bring the downfall of China is because the real estate market actually accounts for roughly 1/3 of the Chinese economy. So a collapse in the real estate market is likely going to cause a total collapse in the Chinese economy. But the question to ask is actually, how likely is this scenario going to happen? Will the Chinese government really let the economy collapse just because of some belligerent real estate developer? Actually, since some years ago, Chinese real estate bubble has been on the headlines and it's been going on for a while. While I'm not saying that it will not burst, but I do not think a sector collapse is going to crash the entire economy. At least not in a controlled economy like China. Firstly, China definitely has the power and the intention to save the economy if it means for them to save the real estate developer, because the last thing that the Chinese government want is social unrest. And to give the Chinese government some credit, this real estate bubble, it was something that they already started bursting in 2020. In 2020, they realized that the real estate developers are too much in debt. Therefore, they wanted to delever the real estate developers by implementing this 3 red line. So it's definitely not something that China did not see it coming, and they just need to handle the situation right now. However, what are the things that they can do? To understand what China might do, it will be good for us to look back in the past crises such as the Great Depression and the global financial crisis. In the Great Depression, the United States basically just let their banking system collapse, basically saying, I will not help you. So they learned their lesson, and in the global financial crisis in 2008, the Federal Reserve stepped in as the White Knight to save the banking system. And the result is this time round, the recession recovered much faster than before. China is a communist state, but it is not stupid. From all these lessons, they know the danger of letting your entire economy collapse, so they will not let it happen. In fact, it has already lowered its banking rates and started rescuing some of the property developers and banks. And I think this is likely what China is going to do continue forward, lifting the Federal Reserve playbook straight out of 2008 and spend its way out of a crisis. Now at this moment, you might be wondering, Pete, I don't think China can spend like the United States because the United States has the reserve currency, the US dollar, whereas renminbi is not a reserve currency. Yes, indeed, the global demand for US dollar means that even if US dollars is pumped out tremendously overnight, it doesn't mean that US dollar will collapse due to the global demand. However, China has a few tricks up its sleeve. First thing is that it has capital control. So unlike the US banking system, the China banks are mainly state-owned. This means the Chinese central bank can easily provide all the liquidity that is needed. At the same time, China also has the ability to stop money from flowing out of China, therefore defending its currency's value. And this is something that we have seen in Russia recently during the Ukraine war, where the rubles recovered very quickly when Russia implemented capital control and stopped people from transferring rubles out of Russia. This means that the absolute selling of rubles stopped. So similarly, by making it very hard for people to get their money out of China, China will be able to defend its currency by stopping the rampant selling of renminbi. The second trick is actually trade surplus. Now China is the world's factory, accounting for over 20% of the global production. Now what is a trade surplus? Trade surplus just means that China exports way more than it imports. And during the COVID period, this trade surplus exploded because domestic demand dropped while the whole world still demands the same amount of products from China. All these trade surplus means that China has a huge amount of foreign currency, especially US dollars, because US is the #1 trading partner with China. This means that China is able to spend all these trade surplus to bolster the economy without collapsing the renminbi. Now, of course, this is not to say that China doesn't have its problem. It does have a real estate crisis, bank runs, COVID lockdown, and a slowing economy. But in my opinion, an absolute collapse of the China economy is very unlikely. It is like you catching a flu. Now, yes, is there a danger that you can die from flu? Has people ever died from flu before? The answer is yes. However, if you take the medication, there's a very likely chance you will recover from it. Now, with the CCP Party Congress coming up and Xi Jinping likely going to secure his third term, I don't think China will just allow its whole economy to collapse to teach the real estate developers some lesson. It is ridiculous. It is like teaching people not to play with matches just by allowing your house to burn down. And I think one of the main reasons is that because China values stability the most. They are very sensitive to social unrest. I think they will do all within their ability to stop the economy from collapsing. So what is likely to happen? While I do not think that the Chinese economy will collapse, I do believe that right now the economy is in a coma state and it needs to be awakened. Of course, the longer it stays in the coma, the harder it is to recover as the damage will get worse as this drags on. But remember, the Chinese economy has been rather resilient over the years, and that's something that we saw during the COVID period in 2020 and 2021. So it is very likely that with the large population, China will recover from this. So going forward, I think the most likely scenario that will happen is that China will have a little bit of a short recession like catching a flu, where the government will come in and issue medication to intervene, pump in more liquidity, and there will be a long recovery period depending on how fast they get rid of all the bad debt and also how fast they can increase the domestic demand. Alright, so that's my analysis on China and why I think that the China economy will not collapse. Do you think it is possible? Do you agree with me? Or do you have other opinions? Do put in the comments. I read all of them. I would love to chat with you. And once again, if you like the content here, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.